I'm Christina Lutz, this is Brad Eddings, and that's Nolan Rashi. I wanted to start today by telling you that on average, U.S. companies spend 29% of their operating expenses on utilities. And a majority of utilities is spent on electricity. This electricity amount can be up to $30,000 per year. That's like the company is buying a car every year. So, how this happens is because of peak demand. So peak demand is the time where you're using the most energy with your company. So with your utility companies such as Vectren, you have a 10 kilowatt per hour set rate that you pay for. And then any kilowatt that you go over just by 1 kilowatt charges you $5.50 per kilowatt. So you can see how this can amount to a really big amount in peak demand. To give you a more visual aspect of this so you can understand it a little bit better is this is a company's use of their energy in one day, and you can see the 10 kilowatts per hour below. That's what they're paying the set amount for. Everything above is the added $5.50 per kilowatt. You can see how that is an outrageous amount when they hit the 100 mark, and then they also hit the 200 kilowatt mark. So this amounted to over $1,000 for 1 month for one company. You can see how this is an issue. So we would like to implement a plan which is a battery storage or some way to store energy to reduce the cost for these companies. And the way that we can do this is by implementing these different prices together, which would be the battery, the inverter, the installation costs, and it can amount to around $150,000 for a 200 kilowatt system. It's a lot of money, but we think it's really worth it to help those companies reduce this amount of money. Also, we spoke with Nolan, who is the energy technology specialist at Vectren. And he let us know that they have a goal to reduce their energy by 1% in peak demand a year. So not only can we help these companies reduce this energy spendage, but we can also help Vectren meet their goals as well. So now I'm going to hand this over to Brad and let him tell you more about how our idea works.
Thank you, Christine. So currently, commercial facilities receive their power off of the electrical grid. So when a company needs demand, they just request the demand off of the grid. This causes two problems. The first problem is the grid can be already stressed and running at peak capacity. Well, when the company asks for the peak demand, it increases it some. So the second problem is the company is increasing the peak demand that it's going to have to pay for that month. So it increases its monthly bill. So our solution to this problem is to use energy storage to help cut these spikes in peak demand. But this can be expensive, as Christina alluded to. So what we would like to do is aggregate companies together. So we would go out and find multiple companies and look at their peak demands and associate that with an energy storage unit. So let's say they needed 100 kilowatts. Well, we could buy a 100 kilowatt system. So from there, we would aggregate the companies, and they would essentially share the cost of not only the battery, but the installation cost and all the other additional fees that it costs to put one of these storage units together. So the way this would work is, let's say that the office building down here, the second on the right here, needs additional power. It would send a signal to the storage unit, and then the storage unit would inject power onto the grid. So this would cancel out that additional peak demand that unit needed. And then the company would not have increased on its monthly bill. The second part of this thing is we want to buy a piece of ground that's co-located near the grid. And we would put all of these storage units at that location. So this would help out any facility that would not have space on their property to implement such a program. And it would make it a lot easier, and it's cheaper to aggregate everything into one spot. So during non-peak demand hours, our battery storage unit would be recharged, and the facilities would be running off of the normal grid as they do before. And so to go back to Christina's example to explain how this benefits a company, you can see that a company that would have been using our storage facility, when they hit, let's say they capped out at 100 kilowatts, so anything above that 100 kilowatts that would have been injected by our storage unit, well then that would not have showed up on their bill. And that blue spike right there, they would not have had to pay for that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nolan, and he's going to talk about the industry trend.
All right, so the industry trend for the electrical sectors looks to remain strong over the next several years. As you can see, this graph shows the three major sectors: electrical sales, and the commercial sales are actually surpassing residential and industrial, and that's going to kind of focus on our target market later in the slides. So because the power companies are expanding and growing, many are looking for cheaper ways to reduce the cost of power. So for example, wind power has actually reduced 41% of its cost since the year 2008. Solar panels have reduced 54 to 64%, and battery usage has actually reduced nearly 73% since 2008. And this is becoming more feasible for energy companies to implement. And so with our product being battery storage, there are already some companies in the state of California that are already implementing the battery storage units. As you can see, it's a little pricey. The project cost ranges from $1 million to $8.5 million. But in the long run, it's going to help these companies because they're going to save nearly $150,000 to $500,000 annually on their electrical bills. And so, like I said, with the commercial industry being stronger than the industrial and the residential, we're going to focus on businesses in the Evansville area. So there are approximately 23,500 businesses in Evansville, 54 schools, 13 hospitals, and 2 major universities. Now these are going to be the largest users of electricity in our area that we would want to implement this battery usage for. And now I think Brad is going to talk a little bit more about our product differentiation.
Thank you. So our competitors is wind, solar, and hydro. However, our advantage over them is that we do not have to purchase the additional equipment they need. They have to purchase battery supplies, inverters, and things of that nature that we normally will use. And then they have to purchase like solar panels, wind turbines, hydro turbines on top of that. So our system's much cheaper than theirs. For reliability, we're not as dependent upon Mother Nature as our competitors are. We don't have to have sun, we don't have to have wind or rain. And on top of that, our ease of installation is a lot better than theirs because, as I said, we don't have to install all those additional pieces of equipment. And our facilities will be placed at a different location as to where some of theirs will have to be on a location on their site, and they have to have room to do that. Now, we share the same advantages as our competitors. We all can contribute to peak demand reduction, as well as we all have the ability to produce emergency power if available. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Nolan. He's going to talk about our value proposition.
So our value proposition is that our product is unique in 2 major ways, and that it is unique to the consumer because they can actually reduce their electricity cost, and it's unique to the service provider in that they can actually reduce their peak demand goals. Now Christina is going to roll into our business campus model.
So with the business model today, we would like to go ahead and introduce our key partners, our key resources, and our customer segments. So starting with the key partners, we would like to use suppliers as well as contractors and utility companies such as Vectren. Now with our key resources, we would like to use energy storage equipment as well as vendors and contractors. Now Nolan's going to tell you more about our customer segment.
So our customer segments, like I said, we're going to focus mostly on larger and middle-sized corporations in Evansville, businesses, hospitals, factories, schools, and like I said, we're going to get we're going to get established first, and then after that, after we get established, we're going to focus mainly on residential and the housing side of things. So to wrap things up today, everything in our lives revolves around storage. Whether we're storing gas in our gas tank, food in a refrigerator, or books on the bookshelves, everything revolves around storage, and people are looking for more feasible ways to store things. Now, with our proposal of energy storage, we now have a good way to store electricity. Thank you.